Hello, everybody on YouTube. Glad to have you with me here today on the 16th day of September. Month just going right on by. Time keeps on slipping into the future, as the old song goes. Pretty day here in Indiana today. It's mild temperatures, and the leaves are twitching on the trees a little bit, so there's a little breeze going. I mowed the yard yesterday and took a possum on a road trip. I may even do a story time about that later because that is a funny story. So if you're not used to my story times, you can go over to my other channel. I've got story times and ginger snaps on there. So some of those are pretty funny. You might enjoy them. And we got a lot of news to cover today, so I'm going to jump on into it and get going. All the URLs from the articles that I go over today will be in the description of the video, so you can take a look at them at your leisure. And there's some videos and stuff in some of that you might want to take a look at. So we'll just go ahead and jump right on in. The first one that we have, this is off of the New York Post. And Mr. Kerry, Mr. John Kerry, and this thing's trying to load up here, so we'll give it a second. My poor old computer, it's got a hamster running it. Maybe I should have kept that possum. It might have gone a little faster. Let's see. This says, why Kerry's serious ceasefire is already failing. And it says another Secretary of State John Kerry's Hail Mary diplomatic deal is well on its way to collapsing, this time in Syria. A 7-day ceasefire was supposed to start Monday across Syria under an agreement signed last week by Kerry's counterpart Sergei Lavrov. Multi-party talks to end the war, but fire is yet to cease, though attacks have diminished in parts of the country. A half-decade-old civil war wasn't enough, however, to launch the main task of the week. The United Nations was to start delivering humanitarian aid to civilians in long besieged towns like Aleppo. And this thing's jumping around trying to play ads. Stopped. Okay. Now, back to where I was. But fire is yet to cease, though attacks have diminished part of the country. The lull in the half-decade-old civil war wasn't enough, however, to launch the main task of the week. The United Nations was to start delivering humanitarian aid to civilians in the long besieged towns like Aleppo, and we made everything ready, UN Secretary General told reporters Wednesday. But aid convoys hadn't yet moved because one UN source told me we're still waiting for necessary approval from all sides. Neither the Russian-backed Syrian government, which is imposing nor its opponents will guarantee aid workers safety while they deliver food, medicine, and shelter to besieged women, children, and the elderly. Those Syrians are yet to benefit from last week's amicable Kerry-Lavrov handshake. Even Kerry himself reportedly was skeptical the deal would work, but he signed it anyway because, well, you got to do something, right? And while the first stage is off to an iffy start, the deal will get even wobblier next week. That's when America and Russia are scheduled to start sharing intelligence on the fight against ISIS and company. It's a crucial part of the Kerry-Lavrov deal, and one the Pentagon strongly opposes. Reports that Defense Secretary Ash Carter is unenthusiastic about handling the Kremlin details about the anti-regime rebel America supports. After all, Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and the Russian patrons have never been that interested in fighting ISIS. Assad, in fact, complicit in its growth. Instead, the Russians and Assad, other allies, mainly Iran and Hezbollah, are most interested in squashing any legitimate alternative to Damascus' butcher. including groups of America has tried to cultivate since the war began. But like Kerry, President Obama is wedded to an old diplomatic cliche. There's no military solution to the Syrian war. So the over the Pentagon's protest and a diplomatic deal that deepens the Russian-Iranian stronghold on Syria was signed. Except that in reality, there's no diplomatic solution for Syria, at least not at this stage. As long as Assad remains in power, drawing the ire of the country's Sunni majority, the fighting will go on. As Obama and Kerry used to say before they catapulted to Moscow, Assad long ago lost legitimacy as Syria's ruler. Yet Assad won't leave as long as the major powers on the ground back him. Meanwhile, everyone insists Syria must remain a unified country, unless outsiders come up with a viable partition plan or, less dramatically, a proposal to create a loose confederation among Syria's factions. They'll keep fighting each other, and their backers will egg them on. Just look at Iranian Foreign Minister Javad Zarif's opt-in Wednesday, New York Times calling to rid the world of Saudi-backed extremism. What did the pot call the kettle? Since 2011, when the Syrian civil war erupted, Obama has essentially acted as if it's not our problem. In came Russian President Vladimir Putin, who's turning Syria into a Russian Mediterranean outpost. Putin's goals there are blatantly at odds with ours. Indeed, one of his chief objectives is to stick. If America indeed has no skin in the Syrian game, as Obama seems to believe, we should steer clear of peacemaking there. As Russia learned in the 1990s, if you aren't a real world power, you can't play one on TV, and you can't dictate peace solutions to a war from the sidelines. In fact, we do have an interest in today's most consequential Mid-East contest, so the next president will have to walk away from Kerry's making and listen to the hawks advocating a more muscular approach in Syria. There's plenty of space between a large ground force invasion and outsourcing the Syrian war to Putin. This week, Obama chided Donald Trump, suggesting he'd do Putin's bidding around the globe. Too bad John Kerry in Syria, at least, is already doing exactly that. So there's that article on Mr. Kerry. This one, off the Daily Caller News Foundation, says exclusive. Department funneled millions to his daughter's nonprofit. More than $9 million of Department of State money has funneled through Peace Corps to a nonprofit foundation started and run by Secretary of State Kerry's daughter. Documents obtained by the Daily Caller News Foundation show the Department of State funded a Peace Corps program created by Dr. Vanessa Kerry and officials from both agencies, records show. The Peace Corps then awarded the money without competition to a nonprofit Kerry created for the program. Initially, Peace Corps awarded Kerry's group, now called Seed Global Health, with a 3-year contract worth $2 million of State Department money on September the 10th, 2012, documents show. And the chairman of the Senate Committee on Foreign Relations, which oversees both Department of State and the Peace Corps. SEED secured a 4-year extension in September 2015, again without competition. This time, the Peace Corps gave the nonprofit $6.4 million provided by the Department of State while John Kerry was the Secretary of State. SEED also received almost $1 million from a modification to the first award, as well as from Department of State funds the group secured outside the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps program, called Global Health Service Partnership, or GHSP, sends volunteer physicians and nurses to medical and nursing schools in Malawi, Uganda, and Liberia, according to SEED's website. More than 40 clinical educators worked at 13 sites in the 2014-2015 program. Kerry and government officials colluded to launch the program and ensure that SEED would get the contract. Vanessa, Buck, and Sarah are meeting with the Ambassador Gooseby on the morning of 9/16/2011 to discuss the next steps for GHSP, said the memo from September 16, 2011, 1 year before SEED received its first award. With OGAC leadership confirmed that Ambassador Gooseby is very supportive of the initial proposal. The memo was referring to Peace Corps directors Buck Bingham and Sarah Morgenthau and Ambassador Eric Gooseby, who then headed the office of the U.S. Global AIDS Coordinator, OGAC. The State Department office funded GHSP. A meeting 1 month later unveiled the strategy to send tax dollars to SEED. The public funding to start the GHSP is secured. It will come from the OGAC through Peace Corps to support Corps headquarters and field-based activities, and to develop a sub-agreement to provide support to the foundation for contributions for their work in this partnership. Minutes from the November 18, 2011 meeting said. The foundation refers to SEED, which was then called Foundation for Global Health Service. Officials in that meeting also assured Kerry that she would not have to compete with other groups for Department of State funds. Buck obtained clarity of the mechanism by which federal money will be provided to SEED, the minutes said. The process can be fast-tracked and non-competed through a specific grant mechanism. Meanwhile, the State Department buried its intent to transfer funds to the Peace Corps in its required congressional notification. The GHSP is a smaller line item in a multi-page document with multi-million-dollar programs, minutes from the November 2011 meeting said. SEED received its first award less than 1 year later. Peace Corps later provided another nearly $900,000, noting it underestimated the program's expenses, especially travel and salary costs. It's unclear when that modification was added, but Kerry drew a salary from SEED for the first time in 2014. She was the only officer listed on the nonprofit 990 tax form to receive compensation, some $140,000 for a reported 30 hours per week. Discussions about the $6.4 million extension also provides questionable details. Peace Corps officials noted that the contracts could not extend beyond 5 years and considered competing the next award, but decided they would go forward with sole source option if mandated by OGAC. Minutes from the July 17, 2014 meeting said. Ultimately, the extension was awarded without compensation on September 10, 2015. It's unclear why the Peace Corps violated its 5-year policy by giving SEED 7 years of non-competitively awarded funding. Peace Corps justified the decision to forego competition by arguing SEED was already burrowed in the program and that replacing it out would cause problems. As such, if a cooperative agreement were to be awarded to a new partner, applicants that were recruited and vetted by SEED may be unable to be placed in the field, a September 10, 2015 document stated. The document further noted that Peace Corps has been unable to identify any potential partners which satisfy the need of the GHSP program other than SEED, which was created and based around program needs. And this article goes on quite a way, so I'll let you read the rest of it, but you get the gist of it. Kerry funneled money into his daughter's nonprofit, and I'd like to know where I can get a job 30 hours a week and make $140,000 a year, wouldn't you? Holy moly. Talk about corruption. The next one we have here is off the NewYorkPost.com. And this one is on Colin Powell. Colin Powell, Bill Clinton still digging bimbos, according to the New York Post. Poor little hamster running in his wheel to come up for us. going to have to give that hamster an extra cookie when this is all said and done today, I do believe. Here we go. It says Colin Powell wrote in a jaw-dropping email that doesn't want to vote for his pal Hillary Clinton because she's a greedy defender of status quo, whose husband is still digging bimbos to the New York Post. I would rather not have to vote for her, although she is a friend I respect, the former Secretary of State wrote Democratic donor Jeffrey Leeds on July 26th of 2014. 70-year-old person with a long track record, unbridled ambition, greedy, not transformational, with a husband still digging bimbos at home, according to the New York Post, reads the explosive email obtained by the website DC Leaks. Hillary is actually 68. Yeah, like it makes a lot of difference. Powell sent the message just days after the Post revealed in May that Bill Clinton allegedly has a blonde mistress who visits his, and I always have a problem with this, Chappaqua, I think it's called, home so often she was dubbed the Energizer by the Secret Service. Story referenced Ronald Kessler's book, The First Family Detail, Secret Service Agents Reveal the Hidden Lives of Presidents, which named Clinton's Chappaqua neighbor, Julie Tabor McHone, I guess it's McHone, as the other woman. Asked about the email's authenticity, Powell told the Post, geez, don't remember this one. Best ignore, don't you think? Powell also wrote several other emails critical of his fellow former Secretary of State. In one dated August 18, 2015, he blames her for losing a lucrative speaking engagement. Everything HRC touches, she kind of screws up with hubris. I told you about the gig I lost at the university because she so overcharged them they came under heat and couldn't pay any fees for a while. I should send her a bill, Powell griped. On August 23, 2016, he blasted the controversy over the private email server in the basement of Clinton's home in an email to Harlan Ullman, a former naval officer who is now a government security consultant. Dumb. She should have done a full Monty, disclose everything at the beginning. She was using email when she took over. They put the personal system in the basement a few months later, he wrote, adding that Hillary tried to give herself cover by saying he too had used private email while in office. She didn't need any advice or okay from me. She was already doing it. I gave her written guidance on why and how I had been doing it, he wrote. I warned her staff 3 times over the past 2 years not to try to connect it to me. I'm not sure HRC even knew or understood what was going on in the basement. Powell doesn't spare Donald Trump either, calling him a national disgrace and an international pariah. On August 21st, 2016, he wrote to former Clinton administration aide Maribel Badger that people hate Trump, but also can't stand Hillary. Most folks up here detest Trump and won't vote for him, but dislike her intensely at the same time. Ah, well, the country will decide, Powell wrote. Message, he mocked the GOP nominees. Here, let me find my place. In the same message, he mocked the GOP nominee ham-handed attempt to reach out to majority communities, writing, Trump just looks stupid trying to appeal to blacks and Latinos. Well, he blasted the birther movement, which Trump stoked by questioning where President Obama was born. The whole birther movement was racist, Powell wrote. Back in a tweet just before midnight Thursday, writing, I was never a fan of Colin Powell after his weak understanding of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq disaster. We can do much better. And referring to bimbos began July 26, 2014, when Leeds wrote, spent a day with Rudy Giuliani and former Maine Governor Jack golf and interesting politics. I got Rudy to admit the president is a decent man. They don't think Hillary is stoppable. Everyone is beatable, Leeds replied. Giuliani on Wednesday got a good laugh when he read Powell's email, but disputed any claim that he ever believed Hillary was unstoppable, saying, I never thought Hillary wasn't beatable. But he agreed that Obama is a decent man. Thought Obama was an honest man, Giuliani said. Well, I beg to differ. There you have that article about Cohen. Now, the next one we have here is off of dailycaller.com. It says, how Hillary's hubris screw up everything. Former Secretary of State Colin Powell complained to a friend Democratic presidential candidate Hillary Clinton screws up everything she touches thanks to overwhelming personal hubris, a newly leaked email revealed. Powell sent the email, one of thousands leaked by the organization DC Leaks, to private equity tycoon Jeffrey Leeds August 18, 2015, a few days after Clinton's private email server was seized by the FBI. Leeds remarked that Clinton's email scandal was getting worse every day and that she may be in serious trouble. Powell responds by saying Clinton's problems were her own fault. Scroll up here a little bit. It says, Powell then went on a digression to complain that Clinton had ruined a planned speaking appearance of his at the unspecified university by visiting before him and charging an exorbitant fee. She so overcharged them that they came under heat and couldn't pay any fees for a while. Powell said, I should send her a bill. It isn't clear which school in particular Powell is referring to, as Clinton has charged gargantuan speaking fees to more than one school. In April 2014, appearance at University of Connecticut cost the school $251,250, while the month before she charged the University of California, Los Angeles a staggering $300,000. An October 2013 appearance at the University of Nevada at Las Vegas was more restrained at a mere $225,000. Holy smoke. The next one we have here is of the Times of Israel, and this also is Colin Powell. It says in leaked emails, Colin Powell says Israel has 200 nukes. While discussing Iran nuclear deal, former Secretary of State apparently reveals extent of Jewish state's atomic arsenal. Former U.S. Secretary of State and four-star General Colin Powell alleged that Israel possesses some 200 nuclear weapons in an email apparently leaked by Russian hackers this week. Discussing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's March 2015 speech to Congress about the dangers posed by the Iranian nuclear deal in an email he sent to the U.S. Democratic Party donor Jeffrey Leeds. Powell wrote that he doubted the Iranian regime would see an atomic bomb even if it could get one, since the boys in Tehran know Israel has 200, all targeted on Tehran, and we have thousands. The email was published by the Log foreign policy website. Israel maintains a policy of so-called nuclear ambiguity, neither publicly confirming nor denying the existence of an atomic arsenal. According to a 2014 report by Federation of American Scientists, however, Jewish state is believed to possess between 80 and 400 nuclear weapons, though that document authors estimated the figure was closer to 80. Sent on March 3rd, 2015, more than doubled that approximation. As former chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff says, his figure of 200 nuclear weapons would appear to carry more weight than the approximations of the news media's reports. Think tanks, authors, and analysts cited FAS report. A trove of Powell's emails was posted on the website dcleaks.com and first reported by BuzzFeed News late Tuesday. Powell, age 79, did not deny the emails' authenticity when asked for comments by BuzzFeed. The emails, which run from March through last month, offer rare insight into the unvarnished opinions of the respected retired U.S. Army general who was Secretary of State under President George W. Bush. DCLeaks.com has been alleged to be an outlet for hackers tied to the Russian intelligence groups. The website, which says it intends to expose the misuse of political power, has previously released emails from other Washington political figures. In the leaked emails, Powell also bashed both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and spoke frankly about a number of issues related to the U.S. government. However, his March 3rd, 2015 email dealt specifically with the Iran nuclear deal at Nehru's controversial speech to Congress that day about it. Powell told Leeds, his business partner, that he had watched parts of it and that was well done, but nothing new. I could have mouthed it. He challenged some of the assertions made by Nehru in the speech. According to Powell, the Iranians can't use a nuclear bomb if they finally make one because of Israel's overwhelming arsenal. As Ahmadinejad said, what would we do with one? Polish it? He wrote, referring to former Iranian President Mohammed Ahmadinejad. I don't know how to pronounce that. Anyway, he's the Iranian president. Powell said that while his in Abu Dhabi Iranian nuclear deal and had been working for over a decade to reach one, he was unconvinced. I don't trust Iranians. Almost went to jail. And an ad popping up, get rid of that. I don't trust Iranians. Almost went to jail over Iran-Contra, he wrote, referring to a political scandal in the United States in the mid-1980s, in which American officials were caught facilitating weapons sales to Iran despite an arms embargo. Powell also cast doubt on the amount of time to, gosh, these names, good golly, Netanyahu, I guess it is, and others estimated that it would take Iran to develop a nuclear bomb. Bibi likes to say a year away, as do our intel guys. They say it for every year, Powell wrote. So there's the news about Colin Powell. He's just in everything. The next one we have here is about Oregon. And I will preface this by saying that I found a really good video last night Veritas Fox put out and Stacey B, and I put the link to that in the it's a little over an hour long, so obviously I can't play it here on the show, although Veritas said that I could, but you know, we don't have enough time for that. So if you want to see it, you can look that up in the description of this video and take a look at it. But here's this article is off of freedomoutpost.com. Emergency motion filed to dismiss Oregon Bundy case. And I can read you the article. It says an emergency motion to dismiss charges in the ongoing case in Oregon regarding the Bundys and several other defendants was filed on September the 12th, 2016. A 14-page motion was submitted to Judge Anna Brown following all charges against reporter Pete Santilli being dropped. According to the filing, the court is familiar with the issues raised concerning federal subject matter, jurisdiction, and adverse possession, number 649, number 1228. At last Friday's hearing, the court said to undersigned counsel somewhat exasperatedly, you don't give up, do you? It was a moment of levity at the end of a trying week, and counsel did not conclude anything further from it. But counsel did not realize that just a few hours earlier, the government filed documents purportedly supporting a request for judicial notice regarding ownership of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, number 1229 and 1230. Those documents filed at almost the last moment before defendant Ammon Bundy is to stand trial raised several urgent legal issues, contradicting and disproving the government's prior statements regarding subject matter jurisdiction and necessitating the relief sought herein. The declaration also helps demonstrate how the evidence that the government intends to introduce at trial was seized without due process, raising significant issues which must be resolved before any trial on the underlying charges. For the reason asserted, Mr. Bundy moves to immediately enjoin the government's possession to dismiss this matter with prejudice, to restore Mr. Bundy and the citizens for the constitutional freedom to the land and property they possessed prior to the government's unlawful actions dispossessing them of that land and property, to suppress all evidence obtained by the government from the occupation site after Mr. Bundy was arrested on January 26, 2016, and for the other relief set forth below. Scroll down here. It says, Stacy has been looking into this issue of the legal and unconstitutional occupation of state land by the central government since 2012. There is no doubt that DC wishes to control as much of the land and mineral resource as possible, and they have shown that they will use force, violate constitutionally protected rights, and even destroy property to maintain their hold on land that belongs to the states and to the people. The question is now, is the central government save face and see that the charges are dropped from the remaining defendants, or will Judge Brown do the right thing and dismiss the case altogether? Her track record is not very favorable for that line of thinking. So there you have that information on Oregon. The next article that I have for you is off of Newsmax. It says Ford CEO on Trump attacks moving to Mexico about global competitiveness. And actually I think, I believe there's 3 articles here that kind of link together. So bear with me and hang on. We're going to take a ride here. Ford CEO Thursday slammed Donald Trump's attack on the car maker for its plan to move all of its small car production from the United States to a new $1.6 billion plant in Mexico that will create 2,800 jobs. 0 jobs will be lost in Michigan, where Ford is based with the move, Mark Fields told Poppy Harlow on CNN. He told investors of the move to shift the production of the Ford Focus to Mexico on Tuesday. What we announced is that we'll be moving our Focus out of Michigan so that we can compete more financially in that particular segment, but at the same time, that's an argument we have with the UAW, Fields said. What we'll be doing is we'll be replacing those products with 2 very exciting new products. So not 1 job will be lost, and most of our investment is here in the US, he added, and that's the way we will continue to be. While in Flint on Wednesday, Trump bashed Ford's plan to move the car production out of the state. It used to be that cars were made in Flint and you couldn't drink the water in Mexico, Trump said in remarks at the Bethel United Methodist Church. And now the cars are made in Mexico and you can't drink the water in Flint. It's terrible, he said. Fields told Harlow that Ford has created more than 28,000 jobs and has invested more than $12 billion in the United States, but that the company must remain competitive globally. It's about global competitiveness because as a company, we have to be competitive, he said. That way, we earn good return, we can invest in our business and keep growing jobs. Fields declined to say what a president could do to keep Ford from shifting, but said that clearly looking at the tax code, simplifying that, and regulatory certainty is always very beneficial. He added that a level playing field when it comes to trade agreements would help as we look to do our part to drive economic development here in the U.S. So there's that one. And the next one I have here is off of Newsmax, and it says, Bloomberg, Congress should pass TPP before next president takes office. Congress should pass the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, trade pact this year before the next president takes office, Michael Bloomberg says. Despite the cause celebre TPP has become, both Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton oppose it. Most Americans, economists, and business leaders believe more trade is good for the economy, writes Bloomberg, former mayor of New York City. Global trade opens up new markets to American businesses, creating new opportunities to grow, Bloomberg wrote. In fact, the U.S. actually runs a cumulative trade surplus in manufactured goods with our 20 trade agreement partners, and we've long run global trade surpluses for services and agricultural products, but you wouldn't know that by listening to the presidential candidates. So there's that article on what Bloomberg's saying about TPP. The next one we have here, ND.com, and it says, Ford just latest in long line of offshore deals. Ford Motor Company says it plans to move its entire small car operation to Mexico over the next 2 years, the type of below-the-belt punch to American workers that Donald Trump says he won't allow to happen if he gets elected president. Ford, meanwhile, assured workers they would not lose their jobs because it will be expanding its large car operation in Michigan, a familiar refrain that some aren't buying, saying the larger trend is for auto manufacturing to go north and south of the border thanks to NAFTA and new free trade deal that's brewing in Washington. This isn't exactly new, but it's jarring news for many, the Detroit Free Press reports. Ford said in April it would spend $1.6 billion to build a new plant in Mexico and would build small cars in that plant, and said last year it would end production of Ford Focus and the Ford C-Max in Wayne, Michigan in 2018. Trump, the Republican nominee for president, immediately weighed in on the announcement, saying he would stop these types of offshore deals by ending 23 years of unfair trade agreements that sell off American jobs to Mexico and Canada. We're going to charge them 35% tax. And if you know what's going to happen, they're never going to leave, Trump told Fox News. Ford. Carrier, Nabisco, and Caterpillar are among the most recent major U.S. companies to announce major transfers of jobs to Mexico. Almost the entire U.S. textile industry left for Asia and Latin America after NAFTA was signed in 1993 by President Bill Clinton. Patrick Wood, an economist and author of Technocracy Rising, the Trojan Horse Global Transformation, said when he read about Ford's announcement, he had flashbacks to the candidacy of Ross Perot in the 1992 presidential election. Perot warned about the effects of so-called free trade agreements. I heard the voice of Ross Perot talking about that giant sucking sound going south if NAFTA were passed, and I have watched the smoke of the exhaust pipes going down to Mexico ever since, Wood said. It's just been an express train. They packed up and left en masse. This is business as usual, what Ford is doing. Caterpillar, Carrier, and Nabisco, among others, have announced plans to move jobs from the U.S. to Mexico over the past 18 months. Caterpillar announced in 2015 it would move 2 assembly lines and 230 jobs from Joliet, Illinois to Monterrey, Mexico. In March, Nabisco ignored Trump's warnings and said it would go ahead with plans to send 600 jobs from Chicago, where it makes Oreo cookies, to Mexico. United Technologies, which owns Carrier, informed 2,100 of its workers at 2 facilities in Indiana in February that it was shipping their factories and their jobs to Monterrey, Mexico. It wasn't like the company wasn't making a profit. It was, but it could make a bigger profit by exchanging those $20 an hour jobs in Indianapolis for $3 an hour jobs in Mexico. Philadelphia's largest remaining manufacturer, Cardone, told 136 workers in February their services were no longer needed as the company would build brake calipers in Mexico instead. Grand Rapids, Michigan-based Demick did the same thing as 300 workers in January of this year. A few workers shouted obscenities at the corporate official. Some walked out. Others openly wept as United Technologies shattered their hopes and dreams, their means to pay middle-class mortgages, writes Leo Gerard, international president of United Steelworkers for IndustryWeekly.com. In one decade, between 2000 and 2010, America lost 56,190 factories, 15 a day. And critics say almost all of that can be blamed on the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA. Now the Obama administration and its allies in Congress, which includes the majority of Republicans, are a trade deal called TPP. Critics say this deal will have an even more devastating effect on American workers, pitting them against not only their peers in Mexico, but 12 nations in the Pacific Rim. While many GOP presidential candidates railed about illegal immigration and the need to build a wall on the southern border, none produced a plan to erect a barrier against the offshoring of U.S. manufacturing jobs. Trump has since come out with a plan that would do just that. And he is now being lambasted on CNN and other networks that give a forum to globalist economists who say the Trump plan would actually hurt the U.S. economy. They say the trade deals are good for the American worker. American workers are always told it's not their fault that their jobs are sent to Mexico. It's simply a business decision that boils down to mathematics. The minimum wage is 58 cents an hour in Mexico, while the United States requires at least $7.25. The U.S. also has strict environmental regulations compared to Mexico. NAFTA ensnares Mexicans and American workers in a race to the bottom. And the proposed Trans-Pacific Partnership, or TPP, a free trade deal among 12 countries instead of just 3, would place America workers in an even worse competition, Gerald writes. They'd vie for jobs with forced and child labor in places like Brunei, Malaysia, and Vietnam. These deals often have something trying to play. Let me get that stopped before we go on here. Gee whiz. Yeah, there it goes. Let's see. Find a place to push the button to shut her down. I think I got it. These deals have often had a ripple effect as well when a major player in an industry, say a cereal maker, shifts its production to Mexico where it can hire workers at $4 an hour. It allows that company to cut its prices or avoid raising them, thereby putting pressure on competitors to cut their prices, move their factories overseas, or go out of business. The competition inevitably thins, allowing major player that moved its production overseas to then increase its prices. And Ford's calming words about expanding its large car operations in Michigan to make up for the loss of its small car production should be taken with a grain of salt, Wood said. Would seem to be in smaller cars, not larger ones. And even if Ford is telling the truth about its plans to ship the workers now making small cars in Michigan over to a new plant making larger cars, that doesn't discount the fact that America loses out on an expansion of its manufacturing base and must settle for a break-even scenario at best. Some jobs are leaving and some are being created, but it's a wash instead of a net gain. Translation, it's really a loss. My impression is that every time a company decided to shutter a plant and move to Mexico, the leadership of that company felt it's necessary to justify themselves. Somebody invariably gets asked the question, what are you doing this for? Why are you abandoning America for Mexico? Wood said. So the company leadership always anticipates that question and sees a need to justify their actions. So they come up with some kind of explanation on why it's a good thing for American workers. And it's never made any sense to me. Ford saying it's good for American workers because they're going to build a plant for Americans, but this is always what they do. I don't know of any promise that was made along the way to help American workers that's come true. There may be, but I've never seen it. Benjamin Clement, writing for Economy in Crisis, a daily economic report, said Thursday that free trade agreements have put the final nail in the U.S. economy coffin, making it too expensive for American auto companies to manufacture cars in the United States. Knowing they could no longer produce competitively, American automakers shipped their jobs to Canada and Mexico. So-called free trade gives foreign competitors unfettered access to the U.S. economy, tariff and duty-free, with products produced at labor rates in foreign countries much lower than ours, sometimes as low as $4 an hour, that we cannot compete with, Clementi writes. He adds that free trade is forcing us to outsource most of our manufacturing, enriching the individuals and companies that outsource our manufacturing, turning more millionaires into billionaires, while our own labor force, the middle class, evaporates. The globalist agenda for America does not stop with trade deals that sell out American jobs. The globalists not only offshore jobs, but they inshore cheap foreign labor to work in the America's remaining factories. It's a double-edged sword that works against the American middle class, Wood told WND. You just need to watch what they do, not what they say, he said. It reminds me of that old Wendy's commercial where the old lady asked, "Where's the beef?" So there's that article. Next one we have here is off of scmp.com, and it's Duterte orders the U.S. forces out of southern Philippines. President Rodrigo Duterte ratcheted up his feud with the United States on Monday, ordering all American special forces out of southern Philippines, where they have been advising local troops battling Muslim extremists. Duterte's order came a week after he called U.S. President Barack Obama a son of a whore, causing Obama to cancel their scheduled bilateral meeting at a summit in Laos. The Filipino leader said the first to hail from the south and who claims Muslim ancestry has been stepping up efforts to bring peace to the southern Philippines, where decades-long insurgencies with Muslim and communist rebels have claimed more than 150,000 lives. Last month he restarted peace talks with the latest separatist groups, the 12,000 strong Moro Islamic Liberation Front, or MILF, which, like others, has been fighting since 1970s for an independent Islamic state or autonomous rule. U.S. advisors in the area help train Filipino troops, but are banned from engaging in combat except in self-defense. Previously, about 500 to 600 U.S. personnel rotated through the Mindanao region, but in 2014, then Defense Secretary Voltamar Gazman said this would be cut back to 200. Duterte did not specify when or how many Americans would be expelled, but said the Philippine alignment with the West was at the root of the persistent Muslim insurgency. These U.S. Special Forces, they have no place in Mindanao, he told gathering of government employees. The Muslim people will become more agitated if they see an American. They will really kill him. The U.S. Embassy could not be reached for comment. The United States and Manila's main military ally, and the Philippines' colonial ruler until 1946. In his speech, Duterte showed photographs and cited accounts of how U.S. troops killed Muslims during America's occupation of the Philippines in the early 1990s to explain his decision. Duterte's spokesman, Ernesto Abella, said that the statement reflects President Duterte's new direction toward cursing an independent foreign policy. Also, he had out at Obama and UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon for criticizing his bloody crackdown on crime that has claimed 3,000 lives in a little over 2 months. This Obama, when you accuse me of killing, let he who is without sin cast the first stone, he said. In a brief encounter in Laos, Obama urged the Filipino leader to conduct his crime war the right way and protect human rights, but Duterte has dismissed it as being none of America's business. So there you have that information. The next one we have is off of understandingthethreat.com, and it says Islamic movement in U.S. preparing for battle. And it says for UTT followers who are accustomed to brief articles, this is a longer article because it needs to be. This is an important topic. It needs a little more attention. Please read carefully because the implications are significant. Okay, so pay attention. They're telling us this is important. As UTT has continually reported, there exists in the United States a significant jihad movement led primarily by the Muslim Brotherhood, whose organization includes the most prominent and influential Islamic groups in America. The Islamic movement in the U.S. continues their daily work of preparing for coming battles at all levels of the society. From a military standpoint, the leaders of the American Muslim community are coinciding their forces and preparing strategically, operationally, and logistically for war. Going back to the early 1980s, the jihad set up an elaborate network of jihad centers known in the U.S. as the Al-Kafai Refuge Centers to recruit jihads for the war against the Soviets in Afghanistan. Some of these over 3 dozen offices were operated by only a couple jihads with a phone or fax machine, and some had more sizable presence in the community. Nodes across the United States for jihads in many American cities and became centers for possible Al-Qaeda recruitment in the future. For the last few decades, the Pakistani terrorist organizations known as Jamaat known in the U.S. as the Muslims of America, or MOA. Approximately 2 dozen of the 3 dozen known camps appear to be operational today. In the early 1990s, the chief investigator for the state of Colorado, with support from the governor and attorney general, launched a multi-jurisdictional raid of the MOA compound near Buena Vista, Colorado, and discovered weapons, explosive lists of people to be assassinated, evidence that military National Guard bases had been under surveillance, and the like. In one of the gems discovered in the 2004 FBI raid in Annandale, Virginia, home of a senior Muslim Brotherhood Hamas leader, a recording of a senior Muslim Brotherhood leader speaking to a group of Muslim brothers in Missouri revealed the MB has numerous training camps inside America and conducted regular firearms training. To be clear, they are not planning on conducting violent actions in the immediate future, but they are planning for 0 hour, their term for when violent jihad will begin and the time is right. They may wait until an outside influence from foreign power or a major event initiates conflict, and then the Islamic movement can begin the jihad act independently or as an ally for hostile foreign power such as Iran or China. In the MB's 5-phase World Underground Movement Plan, discovered at the 2004 FBI raid in Annandale, Virginia, the Brotherhood states Phase 2, they must establish a government secret within the government. The purpose of this is to have jihadists on the side of our government who will serve as the leadership for the Islamic movement when they seize power in the United States. Until then, their role is to 1, gather intelligence, and 2, conduct influence operations at all levels of the society, especially within the decision-making process. As has previously been discussed, this is much more counterintelligence and espionage issue than it is terrorism matter. The enemy is preparing the battlefield now for its eventual battle to come. The evidence in the largest terrorism financing and Hamas trial ever successfully prosecuted in America's history, U.S. versus Holy Land Foundation for Relief and Development in Dallas in 2008, reveals the most prominent Islamic organization in the U.S. are a part of a massive jihadi network whose stated objective is to wage civilian jihad, to destroy our system of government and establish an Islamic State caliphate under Sahara here. The evidence also reveals the Muslim Brotherhood Islamic Center mosques are the place at which jihad train for battle and from which the jihad will be launched. All of the mosques are military entered during wars in Afghanistan and Iraq, and mosques that European authorities have raided in the last 2 years have had weapons in them. The purpose of a mosque is what Muhammad used a mosque for, and the launch point for jihad is one of those purposes. There are over 2,400 Islamic Center mosques in America, most of which are part of MB's jihadi network. In the United States, the nucleus for the Islamic movement is the Islamic Society of North America, or the ISNA, whose subsidiary Islamic societies number approximately 170. The Muslim Students Association, or the MSA, serve as a recruiting arm for jihadis, and there are over 700 chapters on nearly every major college campus in America. Reports from around the country from civilian and law enforcement sources reveal mosques and Islamic organizations are being built in strategic locations near key infrastructure facilities, military bases, or some other key position in the community. Taxi cab drivers at the largest airports in the United States are Muslims, and there is a noticeable increase in Sahara-compliant Muslim TSA officers, baggage handlers, and airport employees at U.S. airports. Additionally, Muslims are purchasing hotels, Quick Marts, and 7-Eleven type stores with gas stations, and a majority of major hotels in cities across the United States have a manager or assistant manager who is Muslim, which is statistically impossible unless this activity is intentional. Quick Marts and gas stations provide their movement with logistics train that will be needed in battle, having people in leadership positions at major hotels in major cities where law enforcement, intelligence groups, and others hold conferences, serve as excellent intelligence gathering nodes. Jihadists have penetrated U.S. federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies, giving them access to sensitive intelligence systems, while simultaneously they have shut down real threat-based training inside these same agencies under the guise factual truth-based training is offensive to Muslims. Jihadists have also penetrated senior levels of government. Shahail Khan, working for 2 successive Secretary of Transportation with access to classified critical infrastructure details, and have recruited senior U.S. government officials to promote and protect their interests, which are hostile to the U.S. Most recent example was Secretary of Homeland Security Jay Johnson promoting and defending leading MB organization ISNA and speaking at their annual convention expressly to open the door to more cabinet officials to do the same. Key jihadi organizations like Hamas, doing business as the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, work on Capitol Hill, and inside government agencies to keep truthful discussions about Islamic threat from ever happening while plotting to work with Al-Qaeda, as evidenced by UTT's Chris Gabazas' discovery of CAIR document dated 3/8 of 04 at the headquarters in Washington, D.C., stating attempt to understand Islamic movement in the area and start supporting Islamic groups, including Mr. bin Laden and his associates. Now the U.S. government is bringing tens of thousands of Sahara adherent Muslims into our nation. From the Islamic perspective, these people are Muhajiron, I guess it's pronounced, those who make this hijra into non-Muslim lands in preparation for the final stage, which is armed conflict with the host country. This is all part of their strategy and is consistent with core Islamic doctrine. Finally, we are currently observing the Marxist socialist movement in the U.S. working directly with the Islamic movement at the ground and strategic levels. Both have publicly declared their support for one another. They are both receiving funding from hard left Marxist socialists, such as George Soros, and foreign powers, and both are openly pushing for confrontation with an overthrow of the U.S. government. The Islamic movement in the United States is deeply embedded in the U.S. decision-making process, has thousands of organizations and allies, possesses a logistics train of fuel and supplies, conducts weapons training programs, and has access to U.S. Intelligence systems, and it's well funded primarily by Iran, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, etc., has strategic plans for North America and explanatory memorandum, and has a plan to implement the strategy implementation manual, which they are following. The U.S. response is to say Islam is a religion of peace, and they work with the very Muslim leaders who are driving this hostile network. Victory is not possible with this recipe. Each year there are between 70 and 120 new Islamic nonprofits being created in America, most of which appear to be working directly in line with Muslim Brotherhood's plan to wage civilian jihad until 0 hour when the war goes hot. Until then, they continue to prep the battlefield because they are really at war with us, and they are following Shahara, core Islamic doctrine, as their blueprint for what they are doing. So there you have that article, and there are some opinions below that if you want to take a look at the article and read the rest of that stuff for yourself. But that's revealing and rather shocking, but it's good information to know. And every time we see another Muslim being appointed to another political post by our Muslim president, it should send shockwaves through you. The next article that I have is off of thesun.co.uk, and this one is called Armageddon UN. Kim Jong-un has enough uranium for 20 nukes this year as the South vows to annihilate North Korea if he fires one more missile. And it says North Korea could have material for 20 nuclear bombs by the end of this year, experts have revealed, as the defiant South threatens annihilation if one missile is fired towards it. The secretive state detonated a nuclear bomb twice the size of Hiroshima last week and announced it could produce more warheads anytime we desire. The international community has condemned tubby tyrant Kim Jong-un's maniacal nuclear test. A man watched a television screen reporting news of a North Korean submarine-launched ballistic missile test, and there's videos in this if you want to take a look at those at your leisure. And the article goes on and says Friday's explosion was the fifth biggest test carried out since dictator Kim Jong-un came to power in 2011. In response, South Korean President Park Geun-hye vowed it would annihilate the state the very second the North fires even one nuke at us. She has also pledged to continue the construction of a nuclear shield, which is hoped would shoot down missiles before they reach the South. Just days before the test, South Korean military forces warned they will destroy the North's capital with a ballistic missile and high explosives if they detected any sign of a nuclear attack. And it says a military source told Yonhap news agency, which has strong ties to South Korea's government, the North leadership be specifically targeted, with Pyongyang's reduced to ashes and removed from the map. An expert has said Kim Jong-un has expanded his uranium enrichment facilities, which combined with stockpiled plutonium could create enough material for 20 nuclear weapons. Last week's test, held underground tunnels at Punjani Rai nuclear test site, was the second this year. Double-chinned dictator Kim Jong-un has ignored UN sanctions for years, and experts have consistently said it is impossible to know exactly what nuclear capabilities North Korea has. But Siegfried Hecker, a leading expert on North Korea's nuclear program, has assessed evidence of the country's capabilities and made chilling conclusions. He said the country has enough plutonium stockpiled for 6 to 8 bombs. On top of this, he believes it can produce enough plutonium for one more bomb each year. Based on evidence seen during a visit to Yongbyon centrifuge facility, North Korea's nuclear facility, in 2010, he also believes the state could add another 6 bombs to this total. In a report published on 38 North website of the Johns Hopkins University in Washington on Monday, he said a stockpile of sufficient fissile material for approximately 20 bombs by the end of this year and a capacity of adding approximately 7 per year makes the DPRK claim sound plausible. On top of this, American nuclear scientists suggest the country could develop long-range missiles capable of reaching the U.S. in 5 to 10 years if the program is unconstrained. This week's state held a creepy Nazi-style mass rally to celebrate the country's 5th nuclear test. Footage broadcast on state media showed thousands of residents clapping in unison as party leaders watched from the balcony. World leaders have slammed Kim Jong-un's behavior as maniacal recklessness. After North Korea's test last Friday, British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson said these reports are of grave concern. The United Kingdom strongly condemns North Korea for conducting a further nuclear test, which is a flagrant violation of UN Security Council's resolutions and threats to regional peace and stability. Together with the Australian Foreign Minister, I have spoken this morning to the Japanese Foreign Minister, and the UK will be consulting other international partners on a robust response. The 12th Pyongyang Autumn International Trade Fair, which opened at the Three Revolution Exhibition House in Pyongyang on Monday, saw stalls selling budget laptops, tablets, Coca-Cola copycats, and other food items, basketballs, fur garments, scooters, and even massage chairs. So that's what the article has to say here. Mercy sakes, what a bunch of news. Well, I'll tell you, I always like to leave this on some kind of a positive note. It's difficult to do a lot of days when the news is so drastic as what we face and so negative. But, you know, life goes on. And sometimes life can be very, very short. Even if you live to be a ripe old age, you look back on it and time just flew from the time you were a kid until you're, sitting there in your rocker. And I saw this little quote the other day. I thought I'd bring it up. It's by Paul Henderson. It says, "I get up every morning and it's going to be a great day. You never know when it's going to be over, so I refuse to have a bad day. And that's a good quote to live by. When you get up in the morning, don't be thinking about, oh, woe is me. Everything's so horrible and so negative and so awful. Find some positive things in your life. The sun's shining. You're still breathing. You woke up above ground. That's a good start right there. And you can be proactive. Don't wait for kindness opportunity to come to you. Instead, chase after kindness and seek it out. You'll be amazed at what you'll find. Go out there and make friends with somebody. If you find an older person in your neighborhood, or go up the nursing home, or even go to the hospital, visit sick folks or something, because always somebody's got it worse off than you do, and try to brighten their day a little bit. Just smiling at somebody can make a big difference. Just be friendly with people, and stop the negativity. Stop finding fault with everybody. Try to find good things. Life's too short to sit around and be negative and crying and whining and ho-humming and bitching and moaning and all that sort of thing. They say that laughter is the best medicine. Even cancer patients, when they get down sick, they go out and rent comedy movies. And even doctors will tell you, laughter is the best medicine. If you can find things to make you happy and laugh about, it'll make you feel better. It's good for your health. So do something good for yourself today. Find a reason to laugh. If nothing else, go over to my other channel and listen to some of the foolishness that I put on there. That should make you laugh. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, share it with everybody. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Have some fun this weekend. Go out and enjoy yourself. And by all means, kick off your shoes, put your feet down in the grass, curl up your toes, and take a deep breath of fresh air and be glad you're still alive. We'll see you on Monday. Bye.